Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to today's video, which is going to be kind of jam-packed. I have a lot to get through. I have a lot that I've prepared and want to talk about, and we're gonna do a few different things. We are first going to go through my 2023 reading stats. I've been tracking a few new things this year that I'm excited to go over and see different trends and things that have been happening, and I'll talk through it all with you. Then I want to review my 2023 goals that I set at the beginning of last year to see if I achieved them. And then lastly, I will be setting a few new goals for 2024. So if that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and get into it. Starting with 2023 reading stats. First things first, I read a total of 145 books in 2023. This is the second highest number of books that I've read in a year ever. And here's a graph of my last 5 reading years. Really, because in the last 5 years is when I've reprioritized reading as an adult, so I've hit over 100 books every year. My highest was in 2022 when I read 175. So with those 145 books read this year, here's a monthly breakdown of the number of books that I read every month in 2023. I averaged about 12 books a month. My highest reading month was March, where I read 19 books, and my lowest was last month in December, where I only read 2. So many would consider those to be my most successful and least successful reading months, but I thought it would be interesting to also graph my average ratings by month to see if I had better reading months in terms of quality of books I was reading rather than just quantity. So my overall average rating for the year was 3.45, but my highest average monthly rating came in November, where I had an average of 4.0, and my lowest was actually in April when I had an average of 3.0. Then let's get into the genres that I read most in 2023. So unsurprisingly, my most common genre that I read was mystery thrillers with 61 of the 145 books, which is about 42%. My second highest category is contemporary/romance books. I read 49 of those, which is about 34%. The next highest is science fiction, which was 15 books or about 10%. And then historical fiction, which is 9 books or about 6%. My last notable genre is nonfiction, where I read 6 books, which is about 4%. And then I can just cluster everything else into another 5 books that I read, which is only about 3% of my reading. Definitely not surprising that mystery thrillers and contemporary romances are my most read genres, but I am a little bit surprised that they are so dominant when I look at this graph. Again, similar to comparing to my monthly number of books versus average rating of books, I also wanted to look at my average ratings per genre that I read. And very interestingly, the highest average rating per genre that I have is in historical fiction, where I averaged a rating of 3.78, and my lowest is surprisingly sci-fi with an average rating of 3.2. Very, very interesting that my most read genres are not my highest rating, though I can understand the argument that those get a little bit more watered down by the volume of mystery thriller and contemporary books that I read. But I am shocked to see sci-fi at the bottom because I've always thought of sci-fi as a genre that I enjoy. And I've always kind of said that I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but the ones that I do read, I enjoy. And this is disproving that theory. So I might have to adjust that and make different choices when I pick sci-fi books going forward. All right, next let's look at a format breakdown of how I read books. 65 of the 145 books that I read, I listened to audiobooks for, which is about 45%. 62 of the books that I read primarily physically, which is about 43%. And then the least common format of reading books was ebooks. I read 18 or 12%. And that's a number that I do think will be going up in 2024 and beyond with the addition of a Kindle into my life, and also increasing my use of NetGalley, which is e-arcs or ebooks of books that are coming out that I have been really enjoying reading and reviewing. All right, getting into the author breakdown, I am a little bit surprised to say that 114 of the 145 books that I read were written by female identifying authors, which is 79%. That is quite a lot. I knew I read primarily female authors, but I didn't know it was that dominant. Only 27 of the books that I read were by male authors, or 19%, and only 4 of the books that I read, or 3%, were written by non-binary authors. Definitely a stat I would love to increase in the future. And as far as race of the authors that I'm reading, 102 books that I read were written by white authors, which is about 70%. Again, a bigger majority than I was expecting, because of course that leaves only 43 books, or 30% of the books, by non-white authors. And to break that down even further, 29 of those books were by Black authors, so 20%. 9 of the books were written by Asian authors, or 6%, and 5% were written by Latinx authors, which is only 3%. I am really glad that I did track this stat this year because I wanted to establish a baseline of what I naturally pick up in terms of author diversity so that I can make it a goal and prioritize it more in the future with actual numbers to compare it to. And similarly, I tracked representation inside of books as well, not just author demographics, but any kind of diverse representation within characters and stories. So that goes for their race or ethnicity, their sexuality, or if they have any sort of mental or physical disability. I tracked all of those as counting towards diverse representation in the books. And it turns out that 81 of the books that I read, or 56%, contained no notable diversity that I wrote down, and 64 of the books, or 44%, did include at least one of those types of diversity. An interesting and important note here, though, is that I did not track the intersectionality of marginalized identities, meaning that there could be BIPOC characters who are also queer and had a disability, but that would only count once toward that book having diverse representation. And I don't know if that's, right or wrong, but I just want to kind of make that note that this is an imperfect calculation. And I recognize that, for example, a queer book written by a white author is different in terms of diverse representation than a queer book written by a BIPOC author, etc. The last thing that I published this year that I thought was interesting was the publishers of the books that I read. So I read the most Penguin Random House books with 48 books, or 33%. My next highest was Simon & Schuster. I read 19 books by them, or 13%. Then I had a tie between HarperCollins and Macmillan. I read 15 books by each of those publishers, or 10% of each of them. And then Hachette, I read 13 books by that publisher, or 9%. And I will also note that, of course, I track imprints of these books, and any of their imprints I count towards the parent company. So all of those counted together means I read 110 books by the big 5 publishers, which is 76%. Once again, I knew it was a majority of my reading, but I didn't realize it was that staggering of a majority, and that leaves only 35 of the books, or 24%, I read that were published by independent authors or independent publishers not owned by one of the big 5. And last but not least, for the stats portion of this video, I thought it would again be interesting to look at the ratings by publisher to determine which of the publishers are publishing books that I give the highest average ratings to. And this I only calculated for the big 5 publishers because it was the vast majority of my reading. Coming in at number 1, interestingly, is Hachette with an average rating of 3.77, despite being the publisher that I read the fewest number of books by. I find that quite interesting and maybe something I will have to focus on going forward. Coming in at the bottom was Macmillan with an average rating of 3.4, and I find that also interesting because just above them was Penguin Random House, which I said I had read the most books by, only had an average rating of 3.5. So again, I read the most from them, but is that a wise decision considering that I rated them the second lowest? I'm not sure. Okay, so next let's go to my 2023 goals that I set for myself. I find reading and YouTube goals interesting, for me in particular, because I don't know, it's interesting because one, it's a hobby, so I don't want to be forcing myself to do something that's going to take away from other aspects of my life if I don't want to. It's not like a job where I am contracted and understand my compensation for to reach certain goals. Also, a lot of goals that I see people set for themselves when it comes to books, YouTube, content, subscribers, they're often numbers based and they don't always have direct control over those numbers, which I find interesting and I don't like to do for myself. And then the third thing that I think is interesting when it comes to goals that people set for themselves is kind of an all or nothing mentality. Like they will set some number of books, let's say. If you set it at 100 books and you only read 95, a lot of people see that as a direct failure. And I don't like that. I think getting close to a goal should be just as celebrated as actually reaching and surpassing that goal. And again, it brings me back to comparing it to goals that I set like in my workplace or any business sets for themselves. Often reaching, 90 to 100% of a goal is seen as a good thing. So I challenge everyone who is setting goals for 2024 to, if you're gonna set numeric goals, understand that getting close to that, even if you don't hit it, can also be a success. Especially if things have changed, priorities have shifted throughout the year. Don't beat yourself up so hard. All right, with all that in mind, let's get into what my 2023 goals were. So my first one that I set was my Goodreads reading goal. I set it at 100 books, and of course I did surpass that. I read 145, which means I reached 145% of that goal. So that I'm happy with. My second goal was to post 100 videos, and the reasoning I had behind this was that is approximately 2 videos a week, and that was a pace I thought I could keep up with. Turns out I couldn't, which I now definitely know. 2 videos a week is a lot for me to keep up with every single week, especially where I'm at now with my full-time job, including some travel. I have 2 young children and a husband I like to spend time with. I have a number of other hobbies I like to do. Going forward, this will not be a goal, but the result for 2023 is I actually posted 58 videos to my YouTube channel, more than 1 a week, so I am happy about that, but 58% of that particular goal achieved. I also had set a goal to go live on my channel, mostly with productivity sprints, 24 times, which would be about 2 times a month. Actual results, I ended up going live 16 times on my channel, which is 67% of that goal. Things definitely changed again in my life. This year I moved, I started traveling more for my work. Those things definitely contributed towards not fully reaching these goals, as well as I did something that was not a goal, and I started a Patreon. This is important to note because I did also create videos for my Patreon and go live for my Patreon. So that's time that I didn't spend towards public YouTube videos. So if I'm considering also those videos and lives, then I actually posted 69 videos and went live 20 times total, which again means I didn't achieve those goals, but I got even closer. So again, I'm happy with that. The next goal that I set was to meet up with 10 booktube friends. This was definitely an aspirational goal. I knew that when I made it, and I would have been pretty shocked if I reached it, but I am thrilled to say that I did meet up with 8 booktube friends last year. So I achieved 80% of this goal. So for this, I did a trip down to Virginia where I met up with my besties, Gwen, Jessie, Layna, and Summer for a long weekend together. That was so much fun. During that trip, we also met up with Gabbi from GabbingAboutBooks, which was a surprise to me and I absolutely loved it. So that's 5 of the 8 friends that I met up with in that month. Then in May, I met up with Dani from Dani's Reading Corner. We went to an author event together, which I did vlog and had so much fun with. In June, I met Jan from Jan Agaton when I went to Chicago. We went to a bookstore and a Starbucks together. I also met Joey. That was so much fun. And then in September, I met Kelsi from Essentially Booked. We actually lived close to each other when I lived in Iowa, so we finally made a meetup happen. We went to a couple of bookstores together. Again, it was so much fun. I'm glad that I made this goal for myself so that it forced me to look back on how many friends I did meet up with. That's one of the most fulfilling things about doing YouTube, is forming friendships and relationships that I 100% would not have had otherwise. And meeting in person is just another kind of special. So those are my goals. All in all, did I reach all of them? Absolutely not. However, again, the problem I have with goals is that these numbers tell me to be disappointed with what I achieved in 2023 when I absolutely shouldn't. And I accomplished a bunch of things that I'm also excited about that weren't in my goals that I want to shout out. First of all, like I already mentioned, I launched a Patreon, which I had no idea I was going to do at the start of last year, but happened in September and has been extremely fulfilling, and I can't wait to keep it going this year. I also attended a number of author events and met and listened to some of my favorite authors speak, which was so much fun, and I hope I get the opportunity to continue doing in the future. I don't live in a place that is super conducive to that, so it's not a firm goal, just something that I absolutely will be saying yes to in the future whenever I get the opportunity. I also joined 2 in-person book clubs, which again, so fulfilling. Not something I had as a goal for myself, but something that I will for sure be continuing far into the future. It's really fun to talk in person with people about books, and no offense YouTube, but to talk to people who aren't necessarily so ingrained in the bookish internet. It's kind of fun to interact with people who are more casual readers and don't have all of the context and assumptions and honestly biases that I do have from the bookish internet. It's just been really, really fun being in those book clubs. And lastly, we moved and I got this amazing new home office and home library instead of bookshelves that I'm so proud of. I love the look of. I love living here and being able to work from here and having this be my space. Again, not a goal or something I knew was going to happen at the start of 2023, and I'm glad to have it in 2024. So with that brings me to my 2024 goals, which, probably unsurprising given how I've been talking about goals, are not that crazy. I don't have many of them. For the most part, I want to keep doing what I'm enjoying and also pivoting and shifting things as needs arise. I don't want to pigeonhole myself and set these really firm goals that I actually don't care about and end up not being priorities down the line. So I have 3 goals to talk about. The first one is just my Goodreads goal, the one I set every year because it's just kind of obligatory for using Goodreads. And that's at 100 books. Again, should be achievable as it has been the last 5 years. I don't want to set it higher because I don't need that to be something I'm stressing out about, but I would be shocked if I don't hit it. My number 2 goal is for YouTube, and it's to continue the niched down types of videos that I've really started focusing on. I've enjoyed kind of finding my specialty when it comes up types of videos I put out. And for me, I've found that to be recurring vlog series that allow me to do reviews and recommendations for certain types of books, for certain types of readers, and really add value in those spaces and be a resource and kind of an expert in those spaces that people feel like they can come to my videos for. Again, it's hard to speak into the future and to say with certainty that that's what I'm going to continue doing, but let me give you examples of what I'm talking about. So my book of the month and Aardvark book club reading vlogs have become a staple on my channel that are not going anywhere. I really like those 2 book subscription boxes, and providing reviews and recommendations as a member for other members, which sure translate also to non-book of the month and non-Aardvark members too, but I like that there's kind of a community of us that are looking at these picks every month, deciding what to pick, deciding what to read, and so I'm definitely going to continue doing those. And I guess to set a numeric goal to it, I would like to post 12 of those videos combined, so that means approximately 6 book of the month and 6 Aardvark. That makes it so that I don't have to pick multiple books from those services every month, but every couple of months I should be compiling my books and posting a reading vlog for them. Similarly, I've also been really enjoying my NetGalley ARC reading vlogs as I've gotten more into the routine of researching upcoming books, requesting them on NetGalley, getting approved for some of them, and then reading them and posting a video reviewing all of them. I don't know, I think that's helpful when other creators post those types of videos so that we can know what books to actually spend our money on. And so I hope that that's something I can continue to provide and give reviews for some of the hyped up books and authors that all of us know and love, and also shine some light on underhyped books that I have found myself and think sound interesting. And I'll always give honest reviews, but if they're great, then I can recommend them and give them kind of a platform for marketing that they wouldn't have otherwise. And if they're not great, then I guess I did that reading for you, so you don't even have to take a chance on it. But those are videos I do plan to continue doing in 2024. And again, to set a numerical goal, I'd like to post at least 6 of those. The other thing that niching down my content here on YouTube does is allows Patreon to continue being bonus content. So say you watch my videos, but you want more of the behind the scenes stuff, or you want more of like my personal life and personal vlogs, that can all live on Patreon. And my main channel doesn't get muddled down with lots of different types of videos. I really think keeping them separate is going to be best for me organizationally, and also from what I understand about like YouTube algorithms and stuff like that, also the best for me as a content creator to be producing the best content that I can. So all of that is goal number 2. And then goal number 3 is related to the books that I'm reading. I want to continue tracking and increasing the diversity of the books that I'm reading. So as we talked about in my stats, the number of non-white authors that I read in 2023 was about 30%. I would like to consciously increase that to 40% in 2024. Or higher would be great. And then diverse representation inside of books was at about 44% in 2023. I would like that to be at least 50% in 2024. So all that means is I will be reading from more authors and about more characters that are not like myself, which I consider to be a good thing. And again, hopefully promoting and offering a platform to books and authors that mainstream marketing is not putting their money behind. I feel a bit of a responsibility and also a passion to do that here. So that is goal number 3, and that is all the goals that I have for 2024. It might feel a little bit, I don't know, underwhelming, anticlimactic, but I'm just here to do what I enjoy. Hopefully you're here because you enjoy it too. Please let me know if any of the stats that I went over for 2023 were surprising to you. Did you track anything similar for your own reading? And did you have any surprising findings? Let me know if you achieved your 2023 goals and what goals you set for 2024. I would love to hear and have a little conversation about it. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.